They laughed at the obese girl at the wedding until the single dad stepped forward to speak, and suddenly everything changed. She stood by the buffet table, nervously adjusting her dress and avoiding eye contact with the guests, who whispered and pointed at her behind their hands, because her size was different, and she had always been teased for it all her life. And today, of all days, she had hoped to feel happy, but instead, she felt the sting of judgment like an invisible bruise on her heart as laughter rippled across the room, and she forced a polite smile while her speech was silent. Eyes pleaded for the moment to be over, and at that moment, a man walked into the room with a confident stride, and everyone turned to look because he was tall, with kind eyes and a quiet strength about him. And he was the father of the obese girl. He had raised her alone since she was 6 years old, after her mother left them without a word. And though life had been tough, he had taught her to be brave and to believe in herself, even when others did not. And he saw his daughter flinch under the laughter. So he cleared his throat and walked toward the microphone that stood at the front of the hall. And he said, "May I have your attention, please?" And the room fell silent like a pot of water on a stove suddenly freezing, because his voice was firm and filled with love, and every eye turned to him. And he continued, "My daughter is one of the kindest, most compassionate people you will ever meet, and she has a heart that is bigger than any judgment you could make about her size. And some of you may have forgotten that weddings are meant to celebrate love, commitment, and joy, not cruelty and gossip." And he paused and looked at his daughter with pride shining in his eyes. And the guests shifted in their seats, feeling ashamed for their earlier laughter. And he said, "I taught her to treat everyone with kindness, because that is the true measure of a person. And I hope tonight you will remember that." And a hush fell over the crowd, and the bride and groom looked uncomfortable, because they too had laughed at her earlier without thinking. And then one of the bridesmaids stood up and apologized sincerely, saying she was embarrassed by her own behavior, and she asked for forgiveness. And others followed, until soon the room was filled with apologies and quiet understanding. And the obese girl felt tears of relief gather in her eyes, and her father smiled at her, and she took a deep breath and walked to the dance floor where the newlyweds were dancing, and she clapped for them and allowed herself to enjoy the moment. Music for the first time, and one by one guests began to join her with warm smiles, and the laughter turned into gentle conversation, and the music felt sweeter as everyone celebrated together. And the bride came up to her with tears in her eyes and said, "I am sorry. I should never have laughed. I was thoughtless, and you deserve respect and joy like anyone else." And the obese girl nodded and said, "Thank you." And the bride took her hand and invited her to dance, and suddenly the room was filled with twirling dresses and laughter of a different kind, the laughter of joy and acceptance. And for the first time that night, no one was laughing at her, but with her. And the father watched his daughter dance, and he thought about all the nights he had taught her to stand tall in the face of cruelty, and how those lessons had blossomed into this moment of respect and love. And he felt so proud that he almost forgot the pain they had endured for so long. And the music changed to a slow song, and the father asked his daughter to dance, even though she hesitated at first, because she said she wasn't good at dancing. But he just smiled and said, "It doesn't matter tonight. What matters is that you are loved." And as they danced, everyone watched in awe, because they had never seen a father and daughter so close and so happy. And someone in the crowd whispered that love was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. And that changed the mood even more, and the night went on with sincere smiles, new friendships forming, and the obese girl felt free and happy. And she realized that the laughter that had hurt her didn't define her worth. Only the love in her heart did. And by the end of the evening, she was surrounded by people clapping and cheering. And some even thanked her for her courage. And she stood tall and looked her father in the eyes and said, "Thank you for always believing in me." And he hugged her tight and said, "You taught yourself the most important thing, how to love yourself." And that was the greatest gift of all. Then the wedding came to an end, and guests left with full hearts, not only because they had witnessed a celebration of marriage, but because they had learned a lesson in kindness that they would carry forever. And the obese girl and her father walked outside under the glowing stars, and she felt lighter than she ever had before. And she knew that this night would be remembered, not for the hurtful laughter at the beginning, but for the transformation that followed, because one man stood up for his daughter and reminded everyone what truly matters in life: love, respect, and acceptance. And as they drove home together, she looked out the window, thinking about the journey she had taken from shame to self-confidence. And she smiled, because she knew she would never let anyone's cruel words determine her worth ever again. And finally, as they reached home, she hugged her father and said, "I love you." And he replied, "I love you more." And that night, she went to sleep with a heart full of peace and hope for the future, because she knew that she was beautiful, worthy, and loved beyond measure.